I want to give you some important information on Cashmere by Sherwin-Williams. It's a paint product that has a very interesting quality that makes it rather different from other paints. With the plethora of products out there, Spotlight is our series on paint products and essentially what makes them different, so you can help determine if it's the perfect paint for you. What we're doing in this video is giving you an overview on some of the product details, including the finishes that Cashmere comes in, and I'll also give you a few outsider perspectives as well to help provide further insight. And I'll ultimately tell you when I would recommend using this product over something else. Smash like if you like Sherwin-Williams. So Cashmere is part of the interior acrylic latex paint line by Sherwin-Williams, which is pretty common for your standard interior drywall painting, especially on those residential jobs. There are way more options for commercial projects and especially industrial ones. But what's nice about Sherwin-Williams is they do give you a ton of different options with certain feature sets. Now, depending on which area you're from, the price may differ, and maybe some of the finishes too. But in general, you could classify Cashmere as kind of a mid-level paint product, which is comparable in price to Super Paint, for example, by Sherwin-Williams, and it's also a little more affordable than Duration, for example. So what is Cashmere's claim to fame? What makes it different from other paints, especially around that similar price point? Is it just a fancy black and gold label? And I do mean fancy, it's actually pretty sweet. Love the aesthetic. Well, we can start with the label itself. Underneath the name, it says smooth application and silky finish. Cashmere is meant to provide a very aesthetically pleasing, smooth, rich finish, and it comes down to how it's formulated. I stumbled across an excellent video by CertaPro Painters of Louisville where they describe its self-leveling capabilities. Take a look.
Well, the chemical makeup of the product itself, once you roll it on the wall, the product will start leveling itself up. You see, with other paints, when you roll it out, the natural motion of the roller coming down or up the wall, as it's leaving the surface, it has a tendency to kind of have a little bit of tension on the paint, and it pulls the product up, resulting in what we refer to in the industry as stimpling, that orange peel look.
Okay.
With Cashmere, the way it's formulated, it self-levels, and when it does pull up, it actually goes down and starts to self-level on the wall. So if you were to take, a high-speed video of that and put a extremely strong zoom lens, you'd actually see the paint pull up and then go back down on the wall and flatten out.
Now, even though its main perk is its smooth finish, there's no such thing as a miracle paint. So you still want to make sure you're using proper technique when applying it, which means if you're loading your roller with a lot of paint, which I usually recommend, you still need to back roll to smooth things out properly. It just means that you'll have an easier time getting that smooth finish with a product like Cashmere, especially when you're going with those flatter finishes. Speaking of finishes, this is where Cashmere can start to look a little bit different from those other products, and it's because the finishes are rather unique for an interior paint. Of course, you have your flat finish, which is that non-reflective appearance that you might see on most ceilings, for example, and this would be perfect for those areas of your home where you want to completely hide any surface imperfections at the cost of slightly reduced washability. So I could see this being great for those rooms in your home where you're not getting a ton of foot traffic in and out, which means the walls that you paint will be relatively free of scuffs and scrapes. Now, you could theoretically use it as a ceiling paint as well because flat finishes are great there, but you may be better off finding a dedicated ceiling paint that is designed purely for that. Now, for those of you that are looking for a bit more durability in your paint, especially the people that like to wipe their walls regularly, you can step up in sheen level by going with low luster and or eggshell. As far as I know, eggshell isn't available everywhere, but either way, one or the other will be a suitable choice on the walls for that added durability. It's just a bit shinier than flat, but a bit less shiny than our next finish, which is pearl. And a pearl finish should be familiar to a lot of the Benjamin Moore fans watching because most of their products have that pearl finish. And that's your next step up in shininess. So pearl is the less shiny alternative to what we may know as semi-gloss. It's great for those people that want to paint the trim indoors with something that isn't that shiny, but still shiny enough to withstand some punishment. One of the strangest finishes by Cashmere is actually its shiniest finish, which is called medium luster. Now, even though it says medium, compared to other finishes available, this is definitely the highest sheen level you can get, and it's meant for the highest amount of washability within the Cashmere line. Also pretty suitable for people that appreciate the aesthetic of those higher gloss finishes, because that's kind of what you're getting here. So if you utilize the skip a finish rule, I would usually recommend flat on the walls and pearl on the trim if you like a more understated kind of shininess. Or the other option for a little more washability would be eggshell or low luster on the walls and then medium luster on the trim. Either option will give you a noticeable difference in shininess between your walls and your woodwork. Although Cashmere's main trait is that aesthetic of being a silky smooth, kind of velvety look, it's also known to be pretty washable and also has great coverage as well. If your priority was durability, and that's kind of all you really cared about, then perhaps something like Duration by Sherwin-Williams might be a little more optimized for that purpose. While you're figuring all this out, you just need to factor in which rooms you're painting and how often are you going to have people walking in and out of those rooms by those newly painted walls, opening up opportunities for them to get scuffed and smudged. If it's something like a stairwell or a hallway, a kitchen or a bathroom, those I would classify as higher traffic areas, and you may want to prioritize durability by either going with a higher sheen level in Cashmere or just go with any finish in something like Duration or even Emerald by Sherwin-Williams. Those will be at those higher price points though. But if you're painting the dining room you hardly use or a living room you never use, and it's just ultimately for show, then maybe Cashmere would be the better fit because of its rather unique look. So what are other people saying about Cashmere? Well, I would say that of the contractors that I've spoken with, Cashmere gets generally favorable praise from professional painters. Some of the positives that I heard was the coverage being pretty solid. Also the fact that it's relatively environmentally friendly is a big plus. It's definitely not a zero VOC paint, but it's a low VOC paint, so that's a good thing. The customers don't really need to vacate the building while it's being used. It also has an excellent compromise of quick but not too quick drying time, where you can easily get your 2 coats done within 1 working day, but still have some open time and room to play and do all your brushwork. But of course, no paint is perfect, and there were a few concerns that some people had when using Cashmere. These are, of course, anecdotal pieces of evidence. And some of these contractors maybe only had a few isolated negative experiences, and that was enough for them to use something else the next time, which is fair, right? Very few people argued with the coverage, and most people did agree that the finish was really nice and smooth by the end of the project. But some people believe the paint to feel quite thick, which can be a little troublesome to apply in some cases. There really is a fine line between being too thick and too thin when it comes to your paint's consistency. And it really depends on personal preference. From my perspective, I would much rather have a paint that's a bit too thick rather than too thin, because at least I would still have some options to tweak things a little bit. Is this product for you? I think if you're looking for a solid mid-level paint by Sherwin-Williams that gives you a really interesting smooth velvety finish, Cashmere is just a great choice, and kind of looks-wise, maybe the only choice. Just be sure to use proper technique when applying, and even though it's labeled as a paint and primer in one, I would still at least spot prime any spackling or little repair work that you might do beforehand. Especially when you're using those flatter finishes, you could see flashing or a slightly inconsistent finish on your walls if you skip that little spot priming step. You don't even need to buy a separate primer in a lot of cases. You can just use the existing Cashmere paint itself, paint over those sanded spots, let them dry, and then start your first coat. Here's another Sherwin-Williams product we talked about if you're still trying to decide which product is right for you. Let me know your thoughts on Cashmere down below, because the more information we all have, the better.